to all of you for your time, support and commitment. I'd also like to take this opportunity to say
a quiet family meeting inside Adelaide Cottage has changed everything for the youngest royals. The Princess of Wales has delivered a deeply personal, life-altering announcement directly to her children. Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis are reportedly devastated by the sudden emotional news. This unexpected update completely alters their upcoming school year, and the protective shield around the young siblings has just been tightened to an unprecedented level. The gathering at Adelaide Cottage. A wooden toy train sat abandoned on the plush rug of the drawing room inside Adelaide Cottage on a damp Sunday afternoon last month. The gray skies over the Windsor estate offered no hint of the heavy atmosphere building inside the private residence. The young prince had been playing near the bay window just an hour earlier, his laughter echoing down the narrow hallway. That normal weekend routine came to a sudden halt when a senior nanny quietly gathered the children's scattered belongings and guided them toward the central sitting room. The heavy oak door closed behind them, cutting off the usual sounds of a bustling family home. The meeting was entirely unlisted on any official palace log. It did not involve courtiers, private secretaries, or public relations advisors. The Princess of Wales sat on the main sofa, positioning her two youngest children directly beside her. The Prince of Wales stood near the mantelpiece, his face etched with a gravity that the children had rarely seen before. The conversation that followed was brief, deliberate, and entirely honest. Catherine chose to deliver the heartbreaking update regarding her ongoing recovery and upcoming schedule adjustments directly, ensuring her family heard the truth from her lips before a single word leaked to the international press. The immediate reaction inside the room was one of profound shock. Princess Charlotte, who has frequently been praised by the public for her poised demeanor at state events, looked toward her mother with immediate concern. Prince Louis, still too young to fully grasp the complex medical terminology of the modern healthcare system, reacted to the heavy emotional tone of his parents' voices. The carefree energy that usually defines the young family's private moments evaporated in an instant. The announcement marked a permanent shift in how the children would navigate the coming months. The logistics of the royal household began shifting within minutes of the meeting's conclusion. Security details stationed around the Berkshire property received updated protocols via encrypted radio channels. The standard weekend travel arrangements back to their boarding school were quietly adjusted to allow the family more private time together. A senior protection officer was seen adjusting the window blinds of the principal vehicle, ensuring that no long-range lenses could capture the raw emotion on the young royals' faces as they prepared for the week ahead. The public has grown accustomed to seeing the young family project an image of absolute resilience. Recent appearances at national celebrations showed a unified front, with the children waving to the crowds and participating in traditional ceremonies. But those brief public moments hit a much more challenging private reality. The pressure of maintaining a sense of normal childhood while a parent navigates a serious health journey has tested the internal strength of the household to its absolute limits. The princess made it clear during the discussion that her primary focus remains entirely on their emotional well-being. She explained that her public calendar would undergo a radical contraction, with numerous high-profile patronages and state dinners being removed from her diary for the foreseeable future. This was not a routine administrative shuffle. It was a total restructuring of her royal life, designed to preserve her energy for her recovery and her children. The realization that their mother would not be participating in the familiar public routines hit the young siblings hard. The household staff at the cottage spent the remainder of the evening adjusting to the new directive. The atmosphere in the kitchen and administrative offices was described by an insider as intensely somber. Employees who have worked with the family for years walked on eggshells, eager to provide support while respecting the absolute privacy demanded by the situation. The usual banter between the protection staff and the domestic team ceased entirely, replaced by a quiet, focused professionalism. The timing of the announcement was chosen with extreme care. The palace's inner circle knew that the upcoming school term would bring increased scrutiny from classmates and the wider community. By anchoring the children with the facts of the situation early, the parents hoped to create an emotional buffer against the inevitable rumors that circulate in public spaces. the prince and princess have always maintained that a controlled truth is the best defense against external chaos. The emotional fallout has particularly affected the young princess. At 10 years old, Charlotte is increasingly aware of her unique position within the institutional hierarchy. She has often been seen guiding her younger brother during complex public processions, displaying a maturity that belies her young age. The news of her mother's extended withdrawal from public life has placed an unspoken weight on her young shoulders, forcing her to process adult anxieties while trying to maintain her own school routine. The prince's role inside the home has also transformed as a result of this announcement. He has taken a more hands-on approach to the daily school runs and evening activities, deliberately clearing his own schedule of non-essential state duties to remain present at the cottage. This shift in parental responsibility is a direct response to the children's need for constant stability during a highly volatile period for the family. The physical environment of the cottage has been adapted to reflect this new chapter of private recovery. The main garden areas, which are usually open to occasional views from specific high points within the royal park, have been fitted with additional privacy screening. The children's outdoor play areas have been relocated to more secure, shaded zones behind the main structure. Every modification is designed to ensure that the family can process this difficult transition away from the gaze of the public. The internal communications between the various royal households have reflected the gravity of the situation. A formal memorandum was sent from the Berkshire estate to the administrative offices in London, outlining the strict boundaries that must be maintained regarding the children's privacy. The directive explicitly states that no secondary details of the family meeting are to be discussed outside the immediate private circle of the sovereign. The young prince's reaction to the news has highlighted the challenges of parenting through a crisis. Louis, known for his spirited and expressive personality during public flypasts and parades, has reportedly become much quieter within the home. He has spent more time attached to his mother's side, seeking the physical reassurance that only a parent can provide during times of uncertainty. The change in his behavior has been a source of deep emotional focus for both parents. The family's approach to this crisis contrasts sharply with historical royal protocols. In previous generations, health struggles within the reigning family were often concealed from young children until the absolute last moment, masked by layers of formal distance and nanny-led schedules. The current prince and princess have completely rejected that old framework. They view open communication as an essential tool for building long-term resilience in the next generation of the monarchy. The meeting inside the drawing room concluded with a shared promise of absolute solidarity. The parents emphasized that despite the changes to their public schedules, the core routines of family life would remain completely intact. Sunday dinners, homework sessions, and private country walks will continue to form the foundation of their weeks. The goal is to ensure that the children's sense of security remains unshakable, even as the world around them reacts to the heartbreaking reality of their mother's health battle. The document summarizing the updated family protocols remains safely locked away, but its impact is already visible in the daily rhythm of the estate. The young royals are learning to navigate a complex dual reality, balancing the extraordinary expectations of their public birthright with the raw human challenges of family illness. The gathering at the cottage was a painful necessity, but it has reinforced the unbreakable bond that defines the modern House of Windsor behind closed doors. The weight of the crown on young shoulders. The tires of a dark green family SUV crunched over the gravel driveway of Lambrook School at precisely 8 o'clock on a crisp Tuesday morning. Usually this daily arrival was a routine affair, matching the drops of hundreds of other local pupils. The children would spring from the back seats, adjust their backpacks, and run toward the main entrance to meet their friends. This morning, however, the car did not stop at the standard drop-off point near the playing fields. Instead, it was directed toward a restricted service lane behind the administrative building. A senior security officer stood by the door, scanning the perimeter before allowing the passengers to step out onto the tarmac. The subtle change in the morning logistics was the first physical sign that the children's lives had been altered by the announcement. The school run, once a rare pocket of absolute normalcy for the young siblings, had been adjusted to match an elevated threat and privacy assessment. The change was made following an urgent briefing between the Palace Protection Command and the school's board of directors. The goal was simple, but incredibly difficult to execute. The authorities had to build a total media wall around the children, without making them feel like prisoners within their own schoolyard. The new routine required a tremendous amount of discipline from a 10-year-old princess. Charlotte had always been an observant child, often noticed by royal photographers for her glances toward the cameras during public events. Inside the school walls, that natural awareness transformed into a quiet, protective instinct over her younger brother. During the morning break, while other children played tag across the manicured lawns, she remained noticeably close to Louis. She helped him adjust his school tie and ensured he stayed within the designated safety zones monitored by their plainclothes security team. The pressure on these young shoulders is unique in modern Britain. Other children face family health crises, but they do not have to see their parents' names on the front page of every newspaper at the local shop. They do not have to wonder if their classmates are reading wild internet theories during the lunch hour. The palace has deployed an extraordinary amount of administrative power to minimize this specific type of intrusion. A special digital monitoring team now scans social media platforms around the clock, tracking any mentions of the school or the children's daily activities to neutralize privacy breaches before they can impact the classroom. The school administration took its own steps to reinforce the protective bubble. A private staff meeting was called in the main library on the evening following the family's announcement. The headmaster reminded the faculty of the strict non-disclosure agreements that govern the enrollment of the royal pupils. The teachers were instructed to maintain an environment of absolute normalcy, treating any mention of the family's private situation with a firm, quiet deflection. The curriculum was to proceed exactly as planned, providing the children with a predictable sanctuary away from the emotional weight waiting for them at home. The young prince's daily routine has required the most careful management. Louis possesses a naturally vibrant and energetic personality, a trait that has made him a favorite among public audiences during major state flypasts. Channeling that high energy into a structured school day is challenging for any young child, but it becomes doubly difficult when the home environment is strained by illness. His teachers have focused on providing him with structured physical outlets, encouraging his participation in sports and outdoor building projects to help him process the unspoken tension hanging over his household. The financial and logistical cost of this enhanced security apparatus is substantial, though it is completely hidden from public view. Extra personnel have been quietly integrated into the local county police patrols, creating a secondary perimeter around the village of Winkfield. The goal is to detect any unauthorized freelance photographers who might attempt to use long-range equipment from the public footpaths surrounding the school grounds. The local community has shown a high degree of loyalty, with residents frequently alerting the authorities to any unfamiliar vehicles parked near the estate boundaries. The conflict between their public birthright and their private grief is a constant undercurrent in the children's lives. They are old enough to understand that their family is different, that their grandfather is the king, and that their father will one day take the throne. Yet, when they are inside the walls of the cottage, those grand titles mean nothing compared to the simple reality of a mother who is too tired to participate in their usual evening games. The contrast is sharp, and it requires a level of emotional navigation that would challenge an adult, let alone two young siblings navigating their primary school years. A sharp-eyed royal biographer noted a minor change in the official court circular published last week. A small grant from the Royal Collection Trust was approved for the restoration of a historic children's library at Windsor Castle. The timing of the project was not coincidental. The library sits adjacent to the private apartments used by the family during holiday periods. The prince's office had requested the acceleration of the work to create a secure, private study space where the children could complete their schoolwork away from the main administrative offices of the castle. The creation of this dedicated space allows the children to remain close to their parents during periods of intensive medical treatment. It prevents the need for frequent cross-country travel between different royal residences, reducing the logistical strain on the household and providing a stable anchor for the children's evenings. The room was fitted with traditional oak desks and a curated collection of classic literature, offering a quiet environment where the siblings can work side by side under the supervision of their tutors. The relationship between Charlotte and Louis has deepened significantly as a result of these shared challenges. The princess has taken on a role that goes far beyond the typical dynamic of an older sibling. She has become a constant source of reassurance for her brother, translating the complex emotional landscape of their home into terms he can easily understand. When he looks overwhelmed during a transition between activities, she is invariably the one who steps in to offer a calming presence, mirroring the gentle guidance their mother has always provided. The prince's office remains intensely vigilant about the long-term impact of this stress on the children's development. They are fully aware that childhood trauma can cast a long shadow over a person's adult life, particularly when that life is destined to be lived in the public eye. Every decision, from the adjustment of the school run to the selection of their weekend activities, is vetted through a panel of family advisors who specialize in child psychology and development within high-profile families. The public has largely respected the boundaries drawn by the palace during this sensitive period. The massive crowds that usually gather outside the royal gates have maintained a respectful distance, with many choosing to leave quiet messages of support rather than demanding public appearances. This restraint from the public has provided the family with a crucial window of breathing room, allowing the children to move between their home and their studies without the constant pressure of public scrutiny. The situation inside the schoolyard remains a delicate balancing act. On any given afternoon, the young prince can be seen running across the grass, kicking a football with his classmates, his face bright with the simple joy of sport. For a few hours, the weight of his future title and the worry for his mother's health are completely forgotten. The protective wall built by the palace, the school, and the community holds firm, preserving the precious, fragile space where a young boy can simply be a child. The school day ends much like it began, away from the main gates and the waiting eyes of the outside world. The green SUV idles in the restricted lane, its doors opening quickly to receive the siblings as they emerge from the afternoon assembly. The backpacks are tossed into the rear, the security doors click shut, and the vehicle moves silently back toward the safety of the Windsor estate. The young royals have survived another day under the unspoken weight of the crown, their resilience growing stronger with every quiet mile they travel together. A mother's protectiveness versus public duty. A heavy rain jacket hung from a brass peg in the mudroom of Anmer Hall on a cool Tuesday morning in 2024. Outside, the Norfolk landscape was blurred by a persistent drizzle that kept the local livestock huddled near the hedgerows. The Princess of Wales stood by the window, watching a security vehicle complete its hourly sweep of the northern boundary line. In her hands, she held a printed copy of the Provisional Summer State Diary sent from the Lord Chamberlain's office. The document listed several major national events, including the annual military flypast and the subsequent balcony appearance in London. With a sharp stroke of a blue pen, she crossed out the names of her younger children from the attendance roster, signaling her absolute refusal to compromise their privacy. The decision was a direct challenge to the traditional expectations of the royal communications team. For generations, the public presence of the monarch's grandchildren during moments of national celebration was viewed as an essential component of institutional public relations. It provided the media with powerful images of continuity and stability, reassuring the public that the future of the crown was secure. Catherine's intervention disrupted that established strategy, drawing a hard, unbreakable line between her public obligations to the state and her primary duty as a protective mother. The palace press office spent the subsequent 48 hours navigating the fallout from the diary modification. They had already issued preliminary media credentials to international broadcasting crews who expected to film the young siblings waving from the carriage procession down the mall. The sudden withdrawal of the children required a delicate reframing of the official announcements, attributes being shifted to routine scheduling priorities rather than a deep internal disagreement over family welfare. The prince stood firmly behind his wife's directive, making it clear to the senior courtiers that the emotional security of his children would always take precedence over the demands of the public archive. The roots of this maternal protectiveness are deeply embedded in the lessons learned during the turbulent decades of the late 20th century. The prince and princess have frequently discussed the long-term psychological impact that intense early media exposure had on the previous generation of the family. They are determined to ensure that Charlotte and Louis do not experience that same sense of vulnerability during a period of acute family anxiety. The princess views the current health crisis not as a reason to display resilience to the cameras, but as a crucial window where her children need an environment of absolute, uncompromised safety to process their feelings. The tension between the two departments reached a peak during a closed-door briefing at Buckingham Palace last Tuesday afternoon. A group of senior public relations consultants argued that completely removing the children from the public eye for an extended period could fuel wild internet speculation and damaging rumors. They suggested a compromise, proposing a single, highly controlled photograph of the family in the gardens to satisfy public curiosity. Catherine rejected the proposal instantly, stating that her children's private lives would not be used as currency to quiet the digital news cycle. The complete withdrawal from the public calendar has forced a massive reorganization of the family's daily movements between their various country estates. The logistics team must now ensure that when the family travels from Berkshire to Norfolk, the routes are chosen with an extraordinary level of secrecy. The traditional helicopter flights, which are easily tracked by aviation enthusiasts and amateur photographers, have been largely replaced by long, discreet journeys in unmarked security convoys. The vehicles are equipped with advanced electronic countermeasures to block unauthorized tracking signals, ensuring that the children can move across the country without generating a trail of digital data. The local community in the village of Great Bircham has played an essential role in supporting this protective cordon. Local shopkeepers and farmers have developed a tacit agreement to protect the family's privacy whenever they venture outside the estate walls. If a stranger is seen loitering near the local bakery with a camera, the village network alerts the estate security office within minutes. This grassroots loyalty has provided the princess with a level of comfort that she rarely finds in the more populated areas surrounding the capital, allowing her to take the children on quiet morning walks through the private woodlands without the constant fear of intrusion. The physical security measures inside the Anmer Hall estate have been reinforced over the summer weeks to support this new period of domestic isolation. A private construction firm was brought in to install high, timber acoustic fencing along the public footpaths that border the eastern paddocks. The height of the existing tree line was also increased with the planting of mature laurel bushes, effectively blocking the view from any elevated positions outside the property boundary. These modifications were funded directly from the family's private accounts, ensuring that the details of the work remained completely hidden from public parliamentary expenditure reports. The internal dispute over the public schedule has also highlighted a fundamental difference in philosophy between the old guard of the court and the modern household of the Prince of Wales. The older generation of advisors believes that the visibility of the royal family is their primary source of strength, arguing that an invisible monarchy risks losing its connection to the public. The current prince and princess reject this view, believing that the long-term survival of the institution depends on the emotional health and stability of the individuals who will eventually inherit it. They are willing to accept short-term criticism from the media to protect the long-term well-being of their children. The young princess has shown a remarkable degree of understanding regarding her mother's protective stance. Charlotte has begun to notice the subtle differences in how her family is treated compared to her school friends, and she has embraced the quiet routine of the country estate with a sense of relief. She spends her afternoons helping her mother tend to the small kitchen garden or reading to her younger brother in the sunroom, away from the structured pressures of her school life. The quiet environment has allowed her to remain a child, free from the adult responsibilities that her future title will inevitably bring. The young prince's routine has been similarly shielded from the outside world. Louis's daily activities are now confined almost entirely to the secure interior of the estate, where he can play without the restriction of a constant security presence watching his every move. His father has constructed a small wooden workshop in one of the old outbuildings, where the young boy can build simple projects using traditional tools under close supervision. This hands-on activity provides him with a productive outlet for his energy, helping him maintain a sense of normal progress during a time when his family's public world has been turned upside down. The decision to maintain this strict privacy boundary has had a significant impact on the wider royal family's public relations strategy. With the youngest members of the family unavailable for national events, the palace has had to rely more heavily on the older working royals to fulfill state obligations. This shift has altered the visual dynamic of the institution, presenting a more traditional, aging face to the public during a period when the nation is experiencing rapid social change. The advisors know that this is not an ideal long-term strategy, but they are powerless to change the policy as long as the prince and princess stand united on the issue. The standoff between the maternal instincts of the princess and the traditional demands of the state remains completely unchanged as the summer term progresses. The blue ink on the state diary is a permanent testament to Catherine's refusal to compromise the emotional health of her family for the sake of public relations. The rain continued to fall over the Norfolk fields that morning, washing away the tracks of the security vehicles and leaving the house in a state of absolute, peaceful isolation. The family remains locked inside their protective bubble, their bonds growing stronger in the quiet spaces created by a mother's fierce, unwavering devotion. The shadow in the schoolyard. A crumpled piece of printed paper lay at the bottom of a recycling bin inside the senior common room at Lambrook School late on a Thursday afternoon. The document was a printout of an unverified online article filled with wild rumors about the family's private medical journey. A teacher had confiscated it from a group of older students near the sports pavilion during the lunchtime break. The incident was handled with immediate, silent efficiency. But it proved that the digital noise of the outside world had finally breached the school's protective perimeter. Despite the strict filters on the school's wireless network, the global media frenzy was beginning to cast a long shadow over the children's daily routine. The challenge of managing this hidden intrusion became clear during an afternoon art class. The young prince sat at a corner table, focused on a watercolor painting of the woods surrounding the Berkshire estate. Two older pupils at an adjacent desk were whispering, their eyes darting toward the youngest royal sibling. Louis did not look up from his paper, but his movements became noticeably slower, his brush hovering over the water jar for a long moment. It was a poignant example of the subtle, unspoken pressure that the young siblings face every day. Even in an environment designed for total safety, they cannot entirely escape the awareness that their family is the subject of constant global conversation. The incident was reported to the headmaster's office before the final bell of the school day. Within an hour, a secure phone call was placed to the private secretary at Kensington Palace. The discussion did not involve anger or panic. It was a clinical assessment of the changing digital environment. The palace advisors realized that standard privacy barriers were no longer sufficient against the ubiquity of modern smartphones and instant messaging apps used by older students and parents outside the gates. They had to upgrade their strategy from passive shielding to active containment within the school community. The school responded by implementing a temporary ban on all personal digital devices for students during standard hours, a policy that was framed as a general wellness initiative to improve concentration. The real objective, however, was to prevent the accidental sharing of tabloid headlines or social media rumors within sight of the royal children. The faculty also introduced a structured series of morning assemblies focused on digital literacy and empathy, teaching the pupils the importance of separating private lives from public entertainment. The initiative was executed quietly, ensuring that the royal siblings were never singled out as the cause of the new rules. The emotional strain of these developments has required an extraordinary amount of vigilance from the children's father. The prince has made a point of sitting down with his daughter on the evenings following these schoolyard incidents, providing her with a safe space to ask questions about the things she might have overheard. Charlotte's natural maturity has been an asset, but it also means she absorbs more of the surrounding tension than her younger brother. Her father has focused on reinforcing the core facts of their situation, ensuring that her understanding of her mother's recovery is anchored in reality rather than the dramatic narratives found online. The battle to maintain a normal environment extends far beyond the classroom walls. The parents of other pupils at the school have been subjected to a quiet, polite campaign of deterrence by the palace security liaison teams. During the annual parent-teacher evenings, attendees are gently reminded of the importance of maintaining discretion regarding any observations they make on the school grounds. The community has largely complied, recognizing that the privacy of the royal children is directly tied to the safety and reputation of their own families. Yet, the occasional lapse in discipline is inevitable, creating a permanent state of alertness for the protection staff. The young prince's reaction to the underlying tension has manifested in a quiet curiosity about his family's unique position. During a recent weekend drive back to the cottage, Louis asked a direct question about why unfamiliar people were trying to look over the hedges of their garden. His father handled the inquiry with a practiced, gentle candor, explaining that people around the world cared deeply about their mother's health and wanted to see how she was doing. By reframing the intrusion as an expression of care rather than a threat, the prince successfully neutralized the boy's anxiety, turning a potentially frightening observation into a moment of reassurance. The administrative burden of managing this protective bubble has altered the long-term planning for the children's education. Palace advisors have already begun reviewing the security infrastructure of several prominent secondary schools across the country, looking for institutions that offer a higher degree of physical and digital isolation. The traditional choices are being re-evaluated through the lens of modern privacy management, with a preference for campuses that possess extensive private grounds and a proven track record of controlling student access to external media. The selection process is a reminder that the shadow in the schoolyard is a permanent condition of their lives, requiring a constant adaptation of their future paths. The afternoon sun began to dip behind the old oaks of the school grounds as the final classes dismissed for the weekend. The children emerged from the main doors, their laughter blending with the normal chatter of a school Friday. Princess Charlotte walked with her arm loosely draped over her younger brother's shoulder, guiding him toward the waiting vehicle in the restricted lane. The shadow of the outside world was still there, waiting beyond the iron gates, but inside the car, the atmosphere was one of absolute solidarity. The young royals had completed another week of navigating the complex boundaries of their lives, their internal resilience holding firm against the constant pressure of the digital age. The unbreakable Windsor bond. The heavy timber gates of the Anmer Hall estate swung shut behind the family convoy as a late autumn twilight settled over the Norfolk fields. The transition from the structured, hyper-vigilant atmosphere of the school term to the total isolation of the countryside brought an immediate change in the family's daily rhythm. Here, away from the digital chatter of the capital and the watchful eyes of the schoolyard, the young siblings could finally drop the protective armor they had worn for weeks. The old red brick house, surrounded by ancient oaks and private parkland, served as the ultimate sanctuary for a family navigating its most challenging chapter. The weekend routine in the country was deliberately stripped of all institutional formality. The Prince of Wales spent his mornings leading the children on long walks through the private woodlands, teaching Louis how to identify the local bird migrations, while Charlotte collected fallen leaves for her nature journal. These quiet hours in the open air provided a vital emotional reset for the siblings. The physical space allowed them to move freely without plainclothes, security officers constantly hovering at their shoulders, restoring a precious sense of independence that had been severely curtailed in recent months. The center of gravity for the household remained the sunlit morning room where the princess spent her recovery periods. The children's visits to her room were no longer marked by the heavy, anxious tone of the initial announcement. Instead, they brought the normal, chaotic energy of childhood into the quiet space. Louis would display his latest wooden building blocks, while Charlotte shared stories about her school friends, their voices filling the room with a warmth that proved the core of their family life remained completely unbroken by illness. This shared experience has forged an exceptional bond between the two youngest siblings. The traditional rivalries of childhood have been replaced by a deep, instinctive solidarity that is highly unusual for children of their age. Charlotte's role has solidified into that of a quiet guardian, keeping a watchful eye on her brother's moods and stepping in to distract him whenever the external pressures of their lives seem to weigh too heavily on his mind. Louis, in turn, looks to his older sister with absolute trust, his naturally vibrant personality anchored by her steady, reassuring presence. The administrative teams at Kensington Palace have recognized this internal shift and are adjusting their long-term strategies to match it. Future planning documents for the family's public life are being rewritten to emphasize the unified partnership of the next generation. Advisors realize that the emotional resilience these children are developing today will form the foundation of their future service to the crown. They are being raised not as isolated individuals bound by separate royal duties, but as a tight, supportive unit capable of facing institutional pressures together. The weekend concluded with a simple family dinner in the main kitchen, away from the formal dining halls used during official visits. As the fire crackled in the grate and the dinner dishes were cleared away, the prince and princess looked at their children with a profound sense of quiet pride. The announcement at Adelaide Cottage had been heartbreaking, and the months that followed had tested their domestic security to its absolute limits. Yet, the family had not merely survived the storm, they had grown closer, their internal armor hardened by the shared experience of adversity. The gates of Anmer Hall remained firmly locked against the outside world, but inside, the light of an unbreakable bond shone brighter than ever before. The private walls of the Windsor estates have shielded Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis through a season of unprecedented family heartbreak. By prioritizing open truth and fierce maternal protection, the Prince and Princess of Wales have ensured that their children's resilience is built on absolute family solidarity. As the young royals grow closer through these shared trials, they are proving that the future of the monarchy is anchored in an unbreakable human bond. What do you think about the palace's strict strategy to protect the children from the global media frenzy? Is it possible to maintain a normal childhood under the permanent shadow of the crown? Share your perspectives in the comments below.